Hello, my name is Morgan Reed, and this is my muscle analysis project for Kinesiology 3362. And I decided to do my muscle analysis on the basketball three-point shot. So we're going to start off with the stance phase, which is the first of four different phases of the exercise. And to start off, we need to develop the stability that we're going to need for the remainder of this exercise. So we're going to start off with our feet being shoulder width apart. And by doing this, we are maintaining this isometric contraction throughout our lower limb, and this is allowing us to maintain a stable upright position. We are not wanting to fall forward on our faces right before we're about to do this game-changing three-point shot. We are wanting to maintain the stability of our lower limb. And then for our upper limb, we are adducting our shoulders, so we're pulling them back, getting that pinch between our shoulder blades, using our trapezius and rhomboid muscles to do that. And then using our pectineus and rhomboid muscles, we are downwardly rotating our shoulder girdle. So we are maintaining this anatomical position of our shoulders. And then to finish off the stance phase, we are flexing our elbow concentrically against gravity at about 90 degrees. So this is where we're holding our basketball for the majority of this exercise, is with our elbows flexed at about 90 degrees. And we are using our anterior elbow joint muscles for this, such as our biceps brachii, brachialis, and brachioradialis muscles. And in this stance, we move on to our preparatory phase, which is where we're going to build our power that we're going to use for the next few phases. So we're shifting in our lower limb from an isometric contraction to a eccentric contraction. And it's eccentric contraction because we are moving with gravity right now within our lower limb. We are going from an upright position to in a squat type of position where we are having flexion in our hips, our knee, and our ankles. In our hips, as I mentioned, we're having hip flexion, and we are using our anterior hip muscles, such as the iliopsoas, rectus femoris, sartorius, and pectineus. And then in our knee, we are using our posterior muscles of the knee joint, and those include the biceps femoris, popliteus, semitendinosus, and semimembranosus. And then with our dorsiflexion, which is the flexion of the ankle, we are using the anterior compartment of the ankle and foot joint. And once again, all three of those joints of the lower limb are working eccentrically right now. And then in our upper limb, we are still maintaining this elbow flexion at about 90 degrees, but now we are extending our wrists, and this is also going to be working concentrically. We are holding our wrists in this position, and we have our basketball in the palm of our hand right now, and we have our fingers. I'm going to start here with our fingers flexed. We're going to extend our fingers, and then we are going to abduct our fingers. So we're going to spread them out, and this is how I, as my individual self, am going to be able to have my grip on this basketball. There's some people out there who can hold a basketball in this position somehow, but either my fingers aren't that long or my palm isn't that big. But for this exercise, I'm going to have both my wrists extended as well as my fingers extended and abducted with my elbows flexed, preparing for the next phase in this exercise. which is going to be it's going to be our movement phase. And this is where we're going to go from, in our lower limb anyway, from flexion to extension. So this is another shifting of contractions and actions in our lower limb. So we're going from flexion to extension and eccentric contraction to concentric contraction. So, and the concentric contraction in this case means that we are no longer going with gravity, but we are going up against gravity. So, like in our plantar flexors, we are extending our ankles and we are pressing ourselves up against the floor, or basically using our feet to push down on the floor and raise ourselves up. So in our hips, we are using our posterior hip muscles, like our adductor magnus, semitendinosus, semimembranous, biceps femoris, and gluteus maximus, to extend our hip. And in our knee, we are also extending, and we're using our anterior muscles, which are known as the quadricep muscle group. And as I mentioned a moment ago, plantar flexion, and that's using primarily posterior muscles of the posterior compartment in the ankle and foot joint. And all three of those are working concentrically to go up against gravity, and it's basically returning us to this upright position that we were in, like in our preparatory phase. And now with our upper limb, we have, my elbow is still flexed and it's 90 degrees. My elbows are still extended, as well as my fingers, and my shoulders are still adducted in this phase. And right now in the movement phase, because we have all this power now starting to rise up from our legs into the upper limb, I'm now going to prepare my upper limb for all that power to be received, and then to execute the final phase of the exercise. So I'm going to take my upper limb, which is in this position as I just described, and I am now going to flex my shoulder. So I am still maintaining my elbow flexion and my wrist extension and my finger extension, but now my shoulders have gone from their adducted action and sorry, they are now flexed concentrically. They have gone up in the air against gravity. And from that position in the movement phase, we are now going to follow up with the well, real quickly before I move on, when we flex our shoulders up into this position, we are using our pectoralis major and deltoid muscles. So we're going from our adduction to using these anterior muscles to go up, like as such. And then, yes, I already discussed all the rest of that. Moving on now, so we have flexed our shoulders using those anterior muscles, and now we are moving on to our follow-through phase. And this is the phase that's going to be the icing on the cake for this exercise. This is where we're going to take our shooter arm, which in my individual case is going to be my right arm. It's right here. And we are going to continue to flex the shoulder. My shoulders are flexed, my elbows are flexed, my wrists are extended, and I am going to take my shooter's elbow and I am going to fully extend my elbow. So I am going to thrust that ball away from my body. I'm going to go up into the air, and once my elbow is flexed, I am going to flex my wrist. So I am flexing my wrist. And I said that both of those were eccentrically contracting more so because with the elbow, we have been flexing for the duration of this exercise, and now we are extending and pushing forward. Once we do finish, if we were to do another phase after follow through, I would extend my shoulder back down to its anatomical position, but my elbow would already be extended, which would then lead to it already being an anatomical position. And then with the wrist, I thought it would be an eccentric contraction because here we were concentrically contracting in our extension phase. Then we moved to flexion, and as you can see, my hand, especially when it's up here in the air and it flexes down, it is moving with gravity. It is flexing to the pull of gravity. And the last thing that I mentioned on this slide for follow through is that there is some hip extension left in the follow through phase, and I think that we could even go further and label it hip hyperextension, which would be a concentric contraction. I mention this because hyperextension, or first off, if we are in a flex position, when we extend, that is bringing us back to the normal angle in the anatomical position. And hyperextension is when we continue to extend past that angle, which is a totally normal thing to have happen. But I put that in this slide because I believe that there are some instances where people are in their follow-through stage. Maybe when they went through their movement phase, they were up in the air, and their back, their hips are they are extended, hyperextended, and I just wanted to make the point that that can happen in these cases, but not always. During the follow-through phase, do you have hyperextension in the hips? And that is the conclusion to my project. I want to thank you for giving me all the information and the knowledge that I needed to complete this project, and I really enjoyed this class, and everything that I learned in it is going to make a great impact on my future learning. Thank you.